Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to Chef's Harvest Farm. I'm Chef Mikey. I'm standing here in front of my 500-gallon rainwater collection tank. I just set it up, and today I'm going to try to plug it into my drip irrigation so that I can irrigate my greenhouses with the rainwater. So I didn't really document like up to this step really. Just a little bit of a background. Like the tank I picked up from a retired farmer from the farmer's market that I go to. He's a longtime vendor there, and he was basically just retiring. And so I picked up the tank for $300, and then I've got a buddy who does like homestead services, installs like solar panels and off-grid types of systems for people. So I asked him to come help me install it because I really had no idea where to start. So he came and helped me like pour the concrete pad and then build up some cinder blocks, so we're up like several feet off the ground, plus that has a stand, and all that raised up to try to get some water pressure. So then the drip system is going to go downhill. So I mean, I'll just show you real quick the water pressure that we've got. Well, actually I'm not going to do that because I'm going to get soaking wet. I'll show you that in a second. We've got pretty decent water pressure. And so today we're going to take this and we're going to plug it into our drip system, and I'll show you how I do that, and then maybe I'll give you like a tour of the whole irrigation system too, which is like always a work in progress. Like, I'm definitely not an expert at this. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't have a plan, but we're gonna figure it out. I got a bunch of irrigation connections and everything, and I just figured somebody might get something out of this video to help you install your irrigation system in your garden. It's one of the most intimidating things for me, but once you jump in there and just start plugging tubes together and figuring it out, it's really not that bad. I mean, what's the worst that could go wrong? Just some water goes all over the place. But all right, well, we'll get started. So just some basic things that I have to get this set up. The tank already has like a spout installed at the bottom with a lever that's threaded, and I've put some connections in there to 3/4 inch just hose, a regular hose connection is what's on it now. So I've got this timer. It's just an Orbitz timer. You can pick it up anywhere, any hardware store for like 30 or 40 bucks. So this is going to be the first part that goes on, which is kind of important because this can hold water pressure. So when the timer is off, it can hold that pressure when the valve's open, whereas a lot of these other connections aren't going to be able to hold the water pressure when you want it to be off. So it'll just like burst these pieces off, and I know that from experience. So yeah, put your timer on first, and then I'm gonna put on my filter, which is just a particulate filter. So if there is any dirt left in the water tank after it goes through the other filters, then hopefully this catches it and keeps it out of my drip lines. And then on the end of that, I'm gonna screw on a pressure reducer, because the water pressure coming out of the water tank actually is like pretty decent water pressure. I don't have a gauge to know exactly what the water pressure is, but maybe I'll get one. But I got a 20 psi pressure reducer anyways, just to be safe, so that because again, that amount of water pressure will like blow these connections apart on the drip system, because they can't handle that much water pressure. And it's recommended for 15 psi for most drip systems, but my drip system's so big that I just bump it up to 20 psi because it takes a little extra water pressure to get everything to the garden and fill up all the tubes and hoses, and I don't really have a problem running 20 psi ever. Cool, so let's go put it together. Okay, so this is like where the where it empties, and it's got this lever here, so I can just kind of control the water flow with that, right? So that's just like not even close to open all the way. So I mean, there's decent pressure, you know. If I open it all the way, then yeah, it gives me some decent pressure. So I'll show you how we're going to plug all this stuff right into that. Okay, so anytime you are installing any type of like threaded plumbing connections, this would be true for irrigation or any other plumbing jobs that you might do in your home. You want to use plumber's tape to seal those threads, because the threads are not going to be watertight. So if you don't wrap these in plumber's tape, then they're going to leak. So you don't want to like do the whole job and then realize like, oh, why is it all leaking? I should have added plumber's tape, or learn what plumber's tape is after you installed it. You should watch this video and then you'll know that you need to use plumber's tape before you install threaded plumbing connections. And it's just like this stuff. You can buy it at any hardware store, Home Depot, Lowe's, any place that might sell like plumbing connections. And then you just want to wrap the threading right in with the tape. And you need to make sure you go with the threading, not against it. So when you screw it on, it doesn't go against the threading. It needs to go with the threading. So that is clockwise, righty tighty, lefty loosey. That's it, just like tape, wrap it, and that just kind of seals the deal. So from my timer, then I'm going to put on my filter. And the filter does have a gasket, which, you know, theoretically makes it so you don't need the plumber's tape, but I don't find that they usually actually work like they should or last. So I always just wrap it with plumber's tape anyways, just to be safe. Okay, like that. And I'm like purposefully leaving it like that because I need it to go this way so that this doesn't hit. I got a little bit of a fitted in a tight space over here. So next I'm going to put my pressure reducer on after the filter, and then that'll reduce the pressure going into my lines so that I don't blow them out. But you also want to wrap that one with the plumber's tape. You want to like hand tighten these connections, but you don't want to tighten them too much because they're plastic, and I mean, I'm kind of a big guy, like you can crack those real easy. So I want them to be tight, but I don't want to like tighten it with all my might. Because that will break the connections. And then you gotta buy a new one if you crack it, you know. Okay, and then after my pressure reducer, then this threads into there, and then this connection is what all the irrigation tubing connections have. So it's like a quick disconnect, you know, so the tube goes on there, tightens down, and that's what holds them all together. And I buy all my irrigation supplies from dripdepot.com. So basically anything you see me using here today, I probably got it from Drip Depot. Okay, so I'm sure to wrap the threading on the pressure reducer with plumber's tape also, and go ahead and screw this on. Hand tight, not too tight. So then, you know, I'm left with this assembly. So this is a timer assembly, filter, pressure reducer, and then the coupling that actually allows me to plug it into the mainline tubing. So I'm pretty sure this is going to work, but like I said, I'm not an expert, and I'm not sure, so we're going to get this installed and we're going to see if it works. Okay, so I just installed my assembly onto here, and so you can see the valve. So the way you can know that it's like working is open the valve, because if it wasn't, that would blow the whole thing off from the water pressure. So that's what I'm saying, like the timer can actually hold that amount of pressure. So you want to make sure the timer is the first thing that you connect, because there's no water pressure going into any of this right now. The timer stops it all. Okay, so I've got my valve assembly installed. So now I've got to run mainline tubing from that connection down here, and then this line is actually feeding the drip lines to all of the greenhouses down here. So I basically need to tap in to this line right here. So I'm going to cut it there, tee off, and then I'm going to put a valve here and a valve there. This is where the main city water comes into the system here. So I need to be sure to put a valve so that I don't get backflow into the city water when I use the rainwater tank, and then I need to put a valve here also so that I don't get backflow from the city water into the rain barrel tank. Okay, so my valve assembly is right there, and then I need to tap into this main line right here. So I'm just gonna cut the main line, install a T, and then install a valve behind it, and then we're gonna go off the T with another valve, and then right into the connection there. So they'll tell you that you need like fancy tools to cut this tubing and everything, but you don't. I'm just like using these garden shears. I use like a serrated knife all the time. You don't need any special tools. You can just cut it with any tool that you have that cuts stuff. There's like some tool I think they sell that's like $40 or something like that. Okay, and then I'm gonna put this T, and it just pushes in. And then this tightens it down. So before I actually plug it into the system, I just want to make sure it's working. So I just go on the timer and hit manual, and then you want to make sure you're on the right station. So I got this plugged into station 2, and then we just run it for a couple of minutes, and then it'll start automatically. And there we go. So I know it's working. So now I'll plug it into the system and see if we can water the garden. All right, y'all, so I got everything plugged in here, and we're just gonna try to water the garden for we'll just put like 20 minutes on there. Sometimes it takes a long time for the system to fill up. So right off the bat, I can see I got a little bit of a leak right there. Not quite sure. Okay, let's fix that. Okay, so that little leak that was just happening is a rookie mistake, because it was just because I had this valve closed. So like I was saying in the beginning, these things can't hold the water pressure. So if I hadn't turned that off, the whole thing would have probably bust within a few seconds. So I need to make sure I have that valve on. And then you see I installed this other valve so that it doesn't backflow into the city water, and vice versa. If I'm irrigating with the city water, it goes that way, and I can turn that valve off so it doesn't backflow into my water tank. Okay, so let's try again and see if we have success. So I've got a little bit of a drip right there still, so I'll address that in a minute, but it's not major, but just probably a little issue with the plumbing tape or something. So I can hear the water going through the system, so that's good. And then the line just kind of goes behind here, all this stuff, and then on the other side of that, trees. These are just some of my dirty sins. And then part of it goes that way. Oh, the whole thing goes that way now, don't it? So yeah, I really just realized how kind of my system needs some adjustments. Like I said, it's a constant work in progress. I used to have a line that came like this way and went that way to feed these tunnels. But I readjusted things recently. And so like the only line that I have goes this way, and then it cuts in there under these wood chips. It keeps going here. And then it heads off all these lines. So then it heads off all these lines, which feed these drip lines, and they continue going. Okay, so it takes a minute for the systems to fill up and everything. But it's coming out of these empty valves. Not a ton of water pressure. That's okay. I mean, it doesn't need a ton of water pressure. You might need some adjustments, but I think it's working. There's definitely water dripping out of these drip lines, so that's cool. I don't feel any water in these ones yet. Well, that one's dripping water. Yep, those are filled with water, so that's cool. I mean, it's working. Like I said, it takes a long time to fill up the system, even with the city water. So yeah, this is pretty exciting for me. The little things in life. These tubes are all filled up with water, and they're dripping out. These ones are turned off. These guys are dripping. There's some drips. It's amazing. It's amazing. I definitely like just figured out like some flaws in my system just by doing this too, though. I mean, the this main line here that feeds all these drip lines, it just makes some really wonky turns that I've like done over the years, and they really like see how it like turns here and does this, and it comes in down there, and then it wraps around and feeds all those lines from the other end. So it's a really inefficient way of moving water, since my pressure is limited. So I'm definitely going to really just make it more direct, like the water tank's there, you know, so make it more direct and just come wrap that turn and like just plug into these somehow. So I don't know that I'm gonna do it right this second, but we're gonna do it soon. So the drip lines basically are feeding all three of these tunnels. These three beds, and then those three beds right there are all hooked up on that same line that the water tank's hooked into. And then, I mean, it comes here and then like it tees off here, but I've got a valve there so that it doesn't water all that. But I could very easily just put a valve here and open that one and also water all these. But the system is going to need a lot more attention, like more water pressure, more water volume probably, so like bigger than 3/4 inch mainline tubings. But you know, I'm just learning it all as I go, and it's just a constant, like it's a constant work in progress. The system's definitely not perfect. It's a constant work in progress, and you know, I think we'll get there. And now I can add another water tank onto this system once I get this one dialed in, and hopefully not use city water at all. Well, everybody, thanks for tuning in on my video on how I installed. Thanks everybody for Thanks everybody for checking out my video on how I install my water tank into my irrigation system. It's a work in progress. You know, I definitely identified some flaws in the system while doing it, some things I can do to make it better, and I'll just continue to work on it, and hopefully in one of my upcoming videos I'll take you through the whole irrigation system. I might as well do it on a day where I'm just gonna fix all the flaws and try to make it better. So make sure you click that like and subscribe button so that you get notified when my next videos come out. Hi babies. All right everybody, well that's it for hooking up my rainwater tank to my irrigation system today. I definitely identified some flaws in my system and ways I need to make it better and more efficient. So make sure to click that like and subscribe button so you get notified when I come out with my updated video at some point in the future. And we'll get this thing working nice, and hopefully you learn something, or at least begin to get an introduction to how to set up some irrigation for your garden. And we'll go over my whole irrigation system in the near future. We'll do a whole video about irrigation. Thanks guys, I appreciate it. If you've got questions or comments, make sure you leave them in the description of the video. I had a lot of people reach out and leaving me comments and sending me messages on Facebook, and that's great. I love talking to all you guys, and I'll continue to do so, but it really helps the channel to get noticed if you leave the comments in the comments of the video on YouTube. So rather than message me on Facebook, just leave me a comment in the comments of the video, and I will be sure to respond. I don't have like 1 million subscribers, so I will see your comments and I'll make sure to respond. So I appreciate all the support, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks guys. Hey, what's up everybody? I'm Chef Mikey. Welcome back to Chef's Harvest Farm. If you missed my last video, I'm a former executive chef turned urban farmer, and I make a full-time living growing vegetables in my suburban backyard. So I use no-till agriculture methods, meaning I don't till the ground, and I rely on compost and mulches to cover the soil and for fertility. And up until now I've just bought in all those materials, and you know, if you're a beginner, I would probably recommend just buying in all those types of materials also. But I'm now at the point where I'm wanting to learn how to make my own compost and make my own inputs, and so there's some methods of farming out there called Korean natural farming and Jadam, and what they teach is that everything you need to grow agricultural crops, they already exist. They're already in the soil. They're already in nature around you, the microbes, the biology, but it could be in small amounts, you know, like a little handful of your soil might not have very much fertility in there, or biology or microorganisms to make the fertility available for the plants. But it's there, and you can culture them and grow them. So I have no experience doing Korean natural farming at all, but I've been really interested in it for like the last year or so. So I've been encouraged by some folks on Facebook groups that I talk to just get started. And the easiest way that I've learned to just get started with Korean natural farming is using JMS, which is Jadam Microbial Solution, where we're just going to culture some microbes from around the property and brew them in a bucket, and then it's a soil treatment. So the idea is that we're spraying the microorganisms into the soil, which are going to help improve the available nutrients in the soil, basically the life in the soil. It's all symbiotic with plants. The plants need microbiology to feed them, and in return the plants feed the microorganisms. And it's a lot more scientific than that, but that's the basic idea. You know, you don't have to understand all the science behind it if you can just understand those two things. So we're gonna get this started today. We're gonna get it brewing, and then we'll come back in a few days to see how it's doing. And hopefully, I've got some empty beds. It's the middle of summer. I'm switching over to fall crops, so I've got some empty beds, and I'm hoping to spray this down before I get them planted early next week. So I'm here. This is my rainwater collection tank, and I just got it hooked up. So I'm actually really excited to just use some of my rainwater. So I'm actually using everything from my property, and I spent $0 today to do this. I mean, at some point I spent some money on some of these materials, but it's stuff I've just had laying around. So the point is, use what you have. You don't have to go out and buy what I'm using today or the same exact materials. If you can understand the process of what we're trying to accomplish, then you can do it with any materials. So I've got a 5-gallon bucket here that I've filled with about 4 gallons of rainwater from my rainwater collection tank. And you just want to use like dechlorinated water, because the chlorine in the water will kill your microbes, obviously. So sometimes if you just have chlorine in your water, you can just let it sit out for 24 hours and the chlorine will evaporate. But there's a lot of other chemicals in the water that letting it sit out might not evaporate them, like something called chloramine. I don't know a lot about it, but it's in water, and I don't think it evaporates out within 24 hours like chlorine does. But I could be wrong. But to be safe, and because it's really cool, I'm just using my rainwater. So then I've got these potatoes, and this is what's going to feed the microbiology. And these are potatoes that I grew in my garden right over there. So these were essentially free also. And the microorganisms are going to feed off the starch, which is going to help them grow, and they multiply a lot faster when they have starchy food, which is how we're going to culture them in the bucket. And then I've got 15 or so I learned this whole method from a guy named Chris Trump. I didn't make this up. Chris Trump was a student of the guy who invented Korean natural farming, and he's got a YouTube channel and a course you can take. And so his recipe is 15 grams of sea salt to 4 gallons of water. So I'm gonna just eyeball it. I mean, I don't know. I worked in restaurants long enough that I know what about 15 grams of salt looks like. And you could weigh it. If you have a scale, you can just weigh 15 grams of salt and 4 gallons of water if you want to be precise, but I don't think it really has to be exact. And then I have my collection of microorganisms. Which is like some fungal strands that I got off a pile of wood chips, some soil from like deep back into the trees on my property, and then a little scoop of soil that is from underneath where I've had a big pile of mushroom compost sitting around for all summer. So there should be a lot of like, you know, microbial life in those samples. So I guess technically I bought salt, but I didn't buy salt for this purpose. It was already in my kitchen for cooking. The water's free. I didn't even pay for the water. And then, so I'm using like just some scrap pieces of insect netting. I just have a roll that's not long enough to cover a bed because it's just the butt end of a roll. So it's a very expensive material. So definitely don't go out and just like buy insect netting, because that's what I'm using. You can use any type of material that can kind of hold our material but still let it fall through. So I'm going to cut this in half because I need half of it for the starchy material for our potatoes, and then half for our microbial collections. Okay, so I've got two pieces, and I'm just going to take my potatoes and just kind of put them in here and wrap it up. Try to put it here so you can see. And I'm definitely like breaking them open because I want all that starch to come out in the water. And the recipe is like 2 to 3 potatoes. Mine are Yukon Golds, and they're a little bit smaller than a regular potato, so I just got like 5 or 6, but about like that much potato. And I just kind of break it up like this. And so you want the starch to like fall out. I'll show you in a second. Just gonna tie this up. And we're gonna dangle this into our water. And this is just a little piece of scrap wood that I've had laying around. So I didn't buy this. You don't need to go out and buy a stick like this. You can use any stick, or a piece of a broom, or a hockey stick, or a piece of a shovel, or anything you want. And we're just gonna keep that from like falling in our bucket, just so it keeps it suspended. I'm just using a zip tie to hold this on to it. And then I'm going to take our microbial samples, just a little bit from each one. So this is like the native soil from under the trees. This is from the compost pile. And I purposefully like got 3 different samples so that there's a diversity of microbiology in our solution. Okay. So I've got about that much soil and organic matter and microbiology, and the little microbes on there that are microscopic are going to they're gonna multiply really fast because of all the starch in the water. They would never get fed this much starch in nature, so they would never multiply this fast in nature. So we're like cheating the system and creating our own explosive tea of microorganisms, basically. So I'll hang this one on here.